Kia ora Aotearoa. Welcome whānau to the War on News, your weekly sacred cow slaughtering assault on current affairs, beamed live from the palatial Stratus News bunker buried deep beneath the heart of the Greyland Republic. If this show was Kerry Woodham's new profile picture in the Herald on Sunday, it would be regarded as the contemporary face of Mordor. In tonight's political media crimes against reason kill zone, John Key to rebuild Christchurch with smiles and waves. Ideologically stacked welfare razor gang release their Work Sets You Free report on beneficiaries. Hone cuts an exit package so sweet he makes Charlie Sheen look sober. Plus this week's Sex in the Super City, Wanko of the Week, and the Barack Obama People's Hero of the Week award. Leading the War on News this week, brothers and sisters, lesbians are to blame for the devastating Christchurch earthquake. That's right, whānau. You may have been under the impression that tectonic plates and fault lines were to blame for the dreadful earthquake that has dealt so much grief and sorrow to our beloved city of Christchurch. Apparently not. According to Max Legg, the Senior Minister of Victory Church in Auckland, the earthquake was in fact God punishing New Zealand for abortions, not allowing parents to physically beat their kids up, legalising homosexuality, prostitution, and oddly, lowering the drinking age to 18. Why God, the almighty creator of the universe, should wish devastation on Christchurch for lowering the alcohol purchasing age to 18, Max Legg from Victory Church couldn't expand on. But it seems like a trivial point. Surely a stiff wind and some unseasonal amounts of locusts would be punishment enough for the purchase of alcohol at 18, rather than all-out devastation of the 4 Avenue CBD. Perhaps I could suggest that Max Legg does not actually represent God or Christians any more than Muslim terrorists represent Islam. Max Legg represents the sad lack of science being taught in our classrooms these days. Brothers and sisters, from our tinfoil hat file, the US military is in uproar with revelations that their PSYOPs team in Afghanistan were told to try and twist the minds of visiting US politicians into sending them more troops and more money. Now, if the US military are turning their PSYOPs team against their own politicians, what is stopping them from being used against John Key while he negotiates this free trade deal, which isn't really very free at all and will in fact not deliver us any of the billions and billions John Key has mindlessly promised? The War on News would send John Key a patented PSYOPs blocking tinfoil hat, but we suspect by his vacant optimism that there's nothing to protect. Brothers and sisters, after being dumped by the 2.5 Men sitcom TV show that astoundingly plays at 7:30 PM on New Zealand screens, Charlie Sheen has been making some bewilderingly complex statements about his self-worth. His latest quote deserves some attention. He is quoted as saying, "Most of the time, and this includes naps, I'm an F-18 bro, and I will destroy you in the air." Crack addict on the coke orgy bender of a lifetime, or postmodern soothsayer of our age? You be the judge. The only mystery left is that Charlie has taken off with his girlfriend, porn star mistress, and nanny, which is odd as he hasn't taken the kids with him. To the headlines, whānau. So, John Key will not do as the Greens have sensibly suggested and introduce a levy on the most wealthy New Zealanders, the only New Zealanders who have actually benefited from his tax cuts to rebuild Christchurch. He is instead going to pointlessly lift the EQC levies. Hold on, we've had less than half a dozen major urban earthquakes in 160 years. The EQC will be replenished by 2025. Why triple those rates? John Key's desire to push ahead with pointless Auckland motorway expansions that are questionable in the best of times now seem ludicrous when the Libyan oil spike is factored in. Who the bloody hell is going to afford to drive on these pointless Auckland motorways? Surely that cash can be better spent in Christchurch. It seems John is going to rely on smiling and waving on Letterman and Oprah to take foreign aid, which, let's be blunt, whānau, deserves to go to much more less developed places around the world than New Zealand when we have barely asked the most wealthy to do a thing. The PM does realise how serious the quake is, right? Dump the dumb Auckland motorways, stop bludging from the international community, and make those who have benefited most from his tax cuts push their hands a little deeper into their own pockets. Christchurch needs more than this, and damn it, they deserve better than this. Moving on with the headlines, whānau. Forget the mother of all budgets, the original benchmark of Benny bashing under Ruth Richardson. Paula Bennett and John Kerr preparing New Zealand for the father of all budgets. And by the looks of it, Dad is an angry, violent drunk with a penchant for grievous bodily harm. The ideologically stacked welfare Razor Gang released their Work Sets You Free Benny Bash report last week, and it's a national party redneck raw meat eating wet dream come true, forcing the sick, the handicapped, the mentally unwell, and those dirty, filthy solo mothers back to work or have their benefits cut is the sort of social policy that would make the former apartheid regime of South Africa blush. Paula Bennett seems to want to send the mother and the fetus back to work as soon as possible. Sure, there aren't any actual jobs due in part to the government's own incompetence. Let's not forget the rise in GST was supposed to turbocharge the economy when actually it led to a $2 billion deficit in revenue. But those are just annoying true facts. And annoying true facts should never be allowed to get in the way of some good old-fashioned knuckle-dragging Benny bashing. The message from Paula Bennett's Work Sets You Free welfare report is clear. All stick and no carrot makes little Johnny a prison statistic. New Zealand, don't think of them as the children of beneficiaries. Think of them as the prison labour force of tomorrow in our new private prison industry where double bunking means twice the production. Moving on with the headlines, whānau. Two very different breakups this week, folks. We had Charlie Sheen leaving 2.5 men and Hone leaving 3.5 Pākehā, the other name for the Māori Party. The deal Charlie cut has him coked up higher than a British dubstep DJ. The deal Hone cut allows him to run in his electorate without challenge. I'm not sure who got the better deal. But the punishment for pointing out that the Māori Party are mistaking mana enhancement for Stockholm Syndrome is that Hone has the opportunity to launch a new political party using his electorate seat to trigger sub 5% MMP threshold representation. With a mere 1.9% of the vote, Hone could bring in 3 MPs, including Sue Bradford, which would change the parliamentary math to one which meant Phil Goff could actually win the election. It could be the greatest political irony in New Zealand political history that a party formed out of anger with Labour could, by their own toadying for foreshore and seabed legislation, similar to the one they split over, actually win the election for a new left-wing coalition government. This could mean that Charlie Sheen isn't the only one up all night partying. Whānau, are you feeling sexy? It's Sex in the Super City time. Brothers and sisters, the orange Oompa Loompa of hate, local government minister Rodney Hyde, attempted to have Len Brown taken to task for a billboard given to Len by the Manukau Pacific Trust, with claims that there was an inappropriate use of ratepayers' funds by allowing such use of a aforementioned billboard. The Auditor General has ruled on the supposed inappropriateness and found that there was no such inappropriateness, so now that petty piece of politicking is behind us, how about Rodney Hyde front to ratepayers in Auckland and explain again why he threatened to bring down the government allowing Māori representation and instead opted for up to 38 non-democratically elected Māori appointees to cost us millions and millions. Funny, isn't it, folks? One billboard, inappropriateness that must be investigated. Rodney's jaw-dropping arrogance that ends up costing the city of Auckland millions, just another day at the office. The ratepayers of Auckland facing a 4.9% rate increase must be crying all the way to their credit cards. And let's not forget who is to blame for all of this? Epsom. Ugh. Whānau, let's hand out this week's Wanko of the Week award. Brothers and sisters, this week's Wank of the Week has to go to acts of God versus acts of capitalism. I wonder if it is the bloated public sector that is currently saving lives in Christchurch at the moment that National boast they will be cutting. The government's desire to offer aid to our whānau in Christchurch is just, but why should acts of God be different from acts of capitalism? Hours before the quake, the ideologically stacked welfare raiser gang were announcing their crippling of the welfare state. I have one question for John in the wake of that report. How does a solo mother in Christchurch find work once her child turns 3 now, Mr. Key? Our concept as to who we are as a nation has previously been forged on beaches in war far from our shores or projected on rugby fields of sporting glory. Now, in our darkest hour, our humble resilience and solidarity in the face of such disaster is our new binding spirit and national identity. Yet, why should that deep outpouring of compassion be limited to our fellow New Zealanders because of acts of God and not acts of capitalism? Societies vulnerable deserve as much compassion for the acts beyond their control as those in Christchurch. This quake and the compassion it has brought up in us reminds us of our interconnectedness. It reminds us that we are all a collective despite the hyper-consumer cult of me first and the gimme-gimmes, and that those requiring help are all of us at one time or another. Let's remind this government the lesson we have all learnt in the dust of this dreadful quake, that selfishness as a virtue is not a social policy worth pursuing. Let's end the show by handing out this week's Barack Obama People's Hero of the Week award. Brothers and sisters, this week's Barack Obama People's Hero of the Week award has to go to Libyan drag queen and President Mahmoud Gaddafi, who this week explained that the only reason his people were protesting was because Al-Qaeda had put drugs into their coffee. Who is advising Gaddafi on his media statements? Michael Laws? Surely Gaddafi should have at least made his excuse believable. Something like, the people are only protesting because they've all been slipped roofies from Charlie Sheen. See, now that's believable. Gaddafi's son explained that Plan A was to live and die in Libya. Plan B was to live and die in Libya, and Plan C was to live and die in Libya. So in conclusion, they're all going to die. New Zealand should start getting used to higher oil prices as all the oppressive regimes the West have propped up for their cheap oil start to unravel. Now we'll feel the true cost of repressing large swathes of the world for our oil greed. Suck it up, New Zealand. We're going to reap what we've sowed. That's it for tonight, folks. Don't forget my new show Citizen A plays Thursday 7 p.m. on Triangle and replays on Strata Sky 89 and Freeview 21 at 7:30 p.m. on Sundays. Follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter account and Citizen Bomber Facebook site. It has all the shows posted up online and allows you to befriend other like-minded citizens for romantic news moments. Good night, New Zealand. You stay classy, Aotearoa. Righto.